We can get started whenever you're ready.
All right, well, welcome everyone. This is Tabitha Schmidt. First, thank you so much. We have well over 100 people online with us today, and I cannot say thank you enough. This is a very important moment in our plan, and I just appreciate you taking out the time today. We are very interested in hearing what you have to think. So today the team here is tasked with developing a master plan for Powell Gardens. This plan will build on our beautiful gardens and successful programming to date. We're focused on substantially growing visitation and membership while we increase revenue streams in both earned and contributed income buckets. So just to make sure everyone is on the same page, what is a master plan? So what we're looking for is a guiding document and action plan that incorporates all aspects of the gardens into a sustainable business model that considers investment, staff capacity, available resources, needed new resources, and priorities that will make a significant impact on our future. This plan that we're developing is largely focused on the next 10 years, but it does consider the gardens in the next 25. So today's focus is going to be on a series of draft recommendations, including improvement of circulation, functionality, maintenance loads, and overall garden experience. Part of that equation is looking at the overall footprint of the gardens and the sustainability of the size of the gardens given the available resources. Just as a frame of reference, Powell Gardens is currently, we have 175 acres open to the public, which includes a 3.2-mile nature trail. And we have another 800 acres that are not being used. And so this plan will incorporate the entire 970-acre plot at the gardens. You may see some things that are very surprising. So remember, these are draft recommendations. This is our opportunity to gain feedback from everyone, but we do ask that you be open. We will share challenges and why that we have recommended them. Please also know that the recommendations you're seeing are in response to what the planners have heard in our listening sessions from staff, volunteers, donors, board members, and the community at large to date in the planning process. So now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah Egan, who is our project lead of the planning firm, so you all know, is Design Workshop, and they do master plans for many botanical gardens. So they're a seasoned group. So Sarah.
Thank you very much, Tabitha. So what is the challenge at hand? As we move forward from this pandemic, many of us take with us a new level of appreciation for the natural world and the opportunities within our communities to experience and learn about nature and enjoy the open spaces. There's no better time to consider how the gardens can better serve the community and the planet. To do so, the gardens must increase financial resources realized in the form of new revenue streams, increased funding from donors, significant membership and attendance increases, and provide a deeper impact through the experience it offers. But there are a few challenges to achieve this. While there are just 1,400 family households within a 10-minute drive of the gardens, there are 72,000 family households within 30 minutes and over 475,000 within an hour's drive. While the highest densities of people live closer to the core of Kansas City, an analysis of census demographic data maps those with higher and more disposable income that demonstrate past spending patterns of visiting similar institutions. You can see that many of those people live outside the core of Kansas City, which becomes an opportunity. Yet attendance over time has declined, while the cost of operations and maintenance has increased. Our benchmarking exercise at the start of our process revealed that compared to gardens of a similar size and location, attendance and membership are low at Powell Gardens. The Gardens has recently realized some significant success in attendance, reaching over 120,000 in 2020, which is not shown here, which is shown here on the far right, with 60,000 attending Festival of Lights alone. We can build on this success through the master plan recommendations. Powell is the largest of the benchmarked gardens, yet has one of the lowest staff levels at about 20% below the median, which is about 62 year-round staff at these benchmarked gardens. In general, very few botanical gardens approach Powell's physical size. The master plan considers both the need to be careful about the cost of maintaining the gardens and ways to monetize much of the rest of the gardens, as Tabitha described. Therefore, we are looking at tightening the overall footprint, but we are also expanding in some areas. Our research indicates that the expansion areas are revenue generators. However, to make this vision happen, you will need to grow back staff and maintain and operate the gardens. The opportunities outlined today come with additional staffing needs of about 20 people, which would put Powell in line with its peer gardens. Please note that a great deal of due diligence in the revenue models we'll show you today has been done, but we won't share that in a lot of detail just due to the limited time we have together. Overall, the benchmark study shows that Powell has many areas for growth and many opportunities in front of it. Attendance and membership, and therefore earned revenues, must grow. The short-term action plan will need to focus on fundraising to implement the necessary capital costs for these ideas. So as we move ahead in the master planning process and we envision the next 25 years at Powell Gardens, we must achieve the following as part of this planning process. We call these our critical success factors, our goals for the process. The plan should capitalize on the garden's assets and leverage what is already successful. The plan should reflect the core values and priorities of its board of directors, staff, membership, and donors. So thank you all for being here today. The plan should outline a clear course to achieve financial stability and sustainability, reflective of necessary staffing and maintenance needs. So what do we need from you to move forward from today? We've already heard from many of you as part of the listening phases of our work. There is so much passion and love for this place, and we have done our best to channel your passion into a draft framework plan. We hope that you will see your imprint on the vision thus far. We heard from many of you to focus on the overall experience of families and to celebrate togetherness. The gardens are three generational and should continue to provide something for everyone. So today, we need your feedback on the revenue strategy. This is essentially the business plan for the gardens moving forward. We need your feedback on the land use plan. This is the vision for leveraging the full 970 acres. The botanical garden remains, but you will see an expansion of uses to leverage the full property for the revenue potential and diversify the visitor experience. We need your feedback on the garden site plan. This is the vision for the main botanical garden space that exists today. The plan so far aims to address some of the challenges and opportunities identified in our listening sessions with staff, volunteers, and others. So to help us record your input, we ask you to open a web browser to allow us to have live polling of your feedback. You can also choose to take a short survey following the webinar if it's easier for you. The link to the survey will be provided via email by tomorrow and will include a recording of today's presentation for those unable to make it today or those that choose not to participate in the live polling. If interested and able, please open a separate web browser and type in menti.com as you see on the screen, MENTI.com. It will then come up with a screen similar to what you see, and you'll enter the code that you see on the screen here, which I'll read out loud. 65083032. Once you hit submit, it will enter you into the session and you'll be able to answer some questions as we move along. If anyone is having any particular challenge with this, please put any challenges you're having into the chat and I'll ask Brian to take a look at that quickly. Since we have over 100 people on the session today, it's probably easier to put any questions you have in the chat. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move into a practice question just to see how many people are participating. To do so, Brian and I are going to go back on our screens a little bit. So you're going to see me stop sharing the presentation and Brian will share his screen so you can see the live polling actually occurring. So we'll be doing a little back and forth if you can bear with us. So moving into the first question, have you visited Bloomfest Play outside yet? So we see that we've already got half of you registered in. So I assume some will choose not to participate, but That's great participation so far. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move forward from that. If anyone, again, is having any trouble viewing that, please do let us know. So I'm going to hand it off to Kurt Culbertson now, our CEO at Design Workshop, to present to you the draft revenue generation strategy.
So good afternoon. As you know, revenue is important to the success of the gardens and the ability to maintain the quality and continue to move the facility and the organization forward. We're going to talk about today multiple types of revenue generating strategies, from bolstering existing events to adding additional programs and experiences to building new capital projects and perhaps leasing land to partners. In our discussions to date, we have identified a set of criteria that you see here in determining which revenue generating strategies may be important. One is we've looked at these ideas through the lens of advancing Powell Gardens' mission and vision. How do these ideas advance the brand and reputation and popularity of the gardens? What's the potential net revenue and the chance of achieving it? Will these ideas be successful? The ability to make capital investments from Powell Gardens, having cash available to put into some of these ideas, the ability to attract donor or sponsorship support, what risk might be involved, what impact does it have on the staffing that Sarah was talking about earlier, and then what kind of management time is required? Is there enough revenue generated by these ideas to justify the investment of human resources? Based on the listening sessions that we've had, the conversations we've had with various folks and groups over the last few months, at the start of the process, we identified 5 high-level revenue generating goals. One is to create a value add and grow what you already have. How do we make what exists there now more successful? How can we help it generate more revenue? The second is to maximize wedding and celebration rentals, be they family reunions or graduations or whatever form those celebrations might take. How can we continue to grow that business? The third is, can we link the performing arts and nature within the garden and attract people and create greater visitation and interest in the garden? The fourth is a rapidly emerging idea, one we're quite excited about, is to position Powell Gardens as a center for sustainability research and education. Can we partner with other institutions around the Kansas City region and really position the gardens as a center for sustainability? And then how do we weave health and wellness into the garden experience? And so as we have talked about how you add value add, there may not be direct revenue from some of these strategies, but we believe that they can significantly increase visitation and memberships and therefore increase revenue in that way. And so the kinds of capital projects would include things like ephemeral land art. These may be plantings, these may be sculptures, they may be certain kinds of installations that are only there for a while and are quite provocative and attractive for people to come and visit, that are really built around concepts of nature and plants and so forth. They could be locally curated architectural play structures, like you see in the Forest Giants on the lower right, or these Fortlandia, which is the kind of installation that Lady Bird Johnson in Austin, for example, has. Locally curated architectural play structures. It could be that the expansion or creation of a dedicated children's garden focused on STEM education and discovery. And it could also include the integration of technology in the overall garden experience. Certainly today's generations, increasingly all of us, are exposed to things like augmented and virtual reality exhibits that could occur during Bloomfest or the Festival and Lights. New ways of interpreting nature, new ways of interpreting planting and art that can really draw on immersive gaming experiences and bring new audiences to Powell Gardens, not just children and young adults, but adults who can gain a lot of experience and knowledge from the kinds of communication that these techniques can provide. We think there's great opportunity to showcase the KCMO architectural and design community, as well as regional artists in ways that attract visitations to the gardens. And so these are really ideas that are about leveraging things that are already successful at Powell Gardens and using them to fill in family entertainment gaps and create new regional access for such experiences. Some of the kind of art that may find its way to the garden, it may be nature-based in the sense it's built from natural materials. It may be an exhibit about how a particular artist has interpreted nature in their work. So it may take all kinds of forms and may find its way in various settings throughout the gardens. The second strategy is really around maximizing wedding and celebration rental revenue potential. Not only hosting weddings and other kinds of celebrations, but one of the things that we are finding in our work nationwide is particularly perhaps fueled by the current pandemic, is the idea of overnight accommodations in a natural setting. You may have heard the term glamping, glamorous camping, in a will, tents, cabins, tree houses. You know, imagine being able to rent a tree house like a bird's nest in this upper right-hand corner, or a bee's nest hanging from the trees, and be able to bring your family or your loved one or your partner and spend an adventurous weekend in the gardens, and perhaps do that in conjunction with a wedding or another celebration that's happening. The wedding party may really find an enhanced experience in this way. And we think that given the proximity to the Katy Trail, the I-70 corridor, the cross-country traffic that you see throughout Missouri, there's really an opportunity to meet not just a regional market demand, but really create the premier glamping experience in the Kansas City metro area. We find that people are constantly in search of original, authentic experiences, and these kinds of ideas have a potential to provide that at Powell Gardens. And then further building on the revenue potential from these weddings and celebrations are to really think about how we might renovate existing facilities to serve larger events. Right now, there's some constraints on the size of celebrations that are accommodated. And so, you know, we're currently capped at about 200 folks. So if we could renovate the Missouri Barn, for example, the second floor space, to create another rental space if possible, perhaps a 3-season retrofit of the first floor, so that lower floor of the can serve a longer period of time. Looking now, we'll be studying in the next month how we might better utilize the visitor center's meeting rooms, the Great Hall, Cafe Time, in a way that helps increase rental demands and revenue. And then the third strategy is really about linking performing arts and nature in the garden. And so that notion is really about providing a plug and play facility for Kansas City performing arts. You know, as you know, Powell Gardens has already hosted the Kansas City Ballet, the Kansas City Symphony, but there's really not a venue there that really allows that to occur in an efficient and profitable way. And so if there were an opportunity to create a dedicated stage that could accommodate appropriate ticketed events, space for music in the garden on a more regular basis, we think that could elevate the overall experience and really increase visitation. We have shown an amphitheater and an event lawn is an idea that we'll talk about in a moment as a way to further attract visitors and add revenue and entertainment revenue. The fourth strategy is about positioning Powell Gardens as a center for sustainability, research, and education. There is rapidly evolving in the KCMO region a consortium of groups and individuals that are interested in this idea of regenerative agriculture. And that's new ways of farming that really contribute back to the land, that are more sustainable over time. General Mills has launched a regenerative wheat farming pilot in Kansas. Audubon Conservation Cattle Ranching Program is now the largest regenerative ranching effort in the state. And so Evergreen Ranching is also further looking to expand in the Kansas City region. And so there's the opportunity to create some public-facing partnerships built around this idea of regenerative agriculture that we think are quite important. And there are also academic institutions that have an interest, and we think that provides the opportunity to support the garden's mission, and also perhaps attract research dollars to the gardens as well, and really expand regionally the educational mission of Powell Gardens and communications between farmers and the broader community in a very important way. We have suggested, given the amount of land that is found as part of Powell Gardens, that a portion of the woodland areas might be used for conservation ranching. It's a program the Missouri Department of Conservation and the National Audubon Society are currently promoting to boost imperiled native grassland bird species. And so this idea of creative ways to bring more bird life and wildlife to the gardens is an important consideration as well. Consistent with the idea of sustainability, we think there's the possibility of some level of on-site solar energy production, at least perhaps to offsite the energy demands of the garden. And it may be over time the appropriate that a portion of the property might be positioned as an agri-hood, a residential development that is focused on local food production and integrates gardens and agriculture through the fabric of the community. And then finally, the question of health and wellness. Health, as you know, is a state of being. It's really about having your body in shape and your mind in shape, while wellness is really about the idea of a state of living a healthy lifestyle. And that we think there's real opportunity here for Powell Gardens to further differentiate itself from its other botanical garden peers by providing infrastructure and opportunity to engage in wellness activities. So the master plan currently recommends expanding the gardens program into the woodland areas north of botanical gardens to provide education, exploration, interpretive signage, and so forth around the region's flora and fauna. There's potential to create a tree canopy walk that could be a great way to experience nature and literally be up in the treetops. There are some comparable facilities at Swope Park, for example, but the Go 8 facility there, but those are not really family friendly per se. They're not fully ADA accessible. This is the idea of providing a bridge, perhaps 60 feet in the air with a viewing tower, blinds for watching birds, but all in a configuration that all of the family could visit, and those who have the need for ADA access can also enjoy as well. And then finally, we think there's opportunity for the wellness program and rentals in the garden to include things like yoga platforms strategically placed to take advantage of some of the great views, settings for meditation, outdoor learning, and bird watching, which many of you probably know is a wildly popular activity. And then lastly, we think a portion of the property could be utilized for more active recreational experience. We're again seeing these kinds of activities grow dramatically over the country. An adventure park area might be identified that accommodates mountain biking trails, rope course, perhaps a zip line. Our research suggests that Kansas City is a really starved area for single track trails, family-friendly trails, the opportunity to test your skills at different levels, and that there's enough land here that a portion of the site could be put to that purpose, limited regional competition. And what is out there from a competitive point of view is limited in terms of available schedule, usually only for pre-programmed groups. And so more active recreation in partnership with the more passive areas of the woodland, the more passive areas of the gardens themselves, can bring an expanded audience to Powell Gardens and potential sources of revenue. So you've had a chance to test the Menti survey on Sarah's first question. Would now like you to respond to this one, if you would. Select any of the following revenue generation goals that you do not support. So which of these options don't appeal to you, right? So if you support all of the ones that are listed here, please select option 6 on the questions that you see, right? So 1 is value added, to grow what we have. 2 is maximize wedding celebrations and rental revenue potential. 3 is to link performing arts and nature within the garden. 4 is to position Powell Gardens as center for sustainability research and education. 5 is to weave health and wellness into the garden experience. And 6 is I support all 5 of the revenue strategies. A lot of folks participating on this one.
I believe we had
Move
67
on when
on the
it slows
first
down.
one.
We've got 58 and we'll, okay, I see a few more coming
I
in.
think we had
We're
67 on the first
at
one.
about halfway through our time with you this afternoon, so we're going to try to keep moving, but it's always so exciting to see the numbers flowing in. Thank you so much for responding. So based on the revenue generation model that Kurt shared, the land use plan for Powell Gardens is beginning to take shape. Please consider this a draft. We're partway through our process, so your feedback today is so critical to shaping this. The garden footprint really shifts to include a newly situated woodland area, as Kurt described. You can see that centrally located with the 85 acres there towards the center with the dark green. Some newly placed sort of buffer zones, reduce mowing and maintenance, and control views so that largely your entry experience to the garden remains untouched. A land use for regenerative agriculture takes on the form of conservation ranching towards the back areas of the woodland property. And it therefore has a home in the garden proper and does have the opportunity to be public facing through a secondary access roadway. You then can see opportunities for overnight accommodation situated in the woodlands as Kurt described. So you can see a red area there for glamping. And then a solar production field leverages underutilized land along the highway. And a future residential development potentially hugs the outer edges of the property to the north and to the east. So that's the land use plan. So we'll switch back to a quick question for you on the land use plan. I know that's a very quick overview. Are there any land uses shown that you do not support? So Brian, if you could pull up the Menti. So fun to see everyone's faces. I do miss getting together in person. I look forward to when we can all be together again. Great. So a little more feedback here in terms of selecting some things that maybe aren't in line with your view of the future of the gardens. It looks like Adventure Park being the thing that might be the most questioned at this point. And Brian will talk us through a little bit more when we get to the site plan portion of our presentation here shortly. He'll talk through a little bit more detail about what that Adventure Park would and could look like and where it could be situated so that it certainly expands the mission of the gardens, but wouldn't impact the visual experience of the gardens per se. So we'll talk a little more about that.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Thumbs up. Great. So although, let me introduce myself. I'm Brian Corey. I'm also with Design Workshop. So although revenue generation is the driving factor for this master plan, we also identified a series of goals to address the issues and opportunities shared throughout our listening sessions. The first one being improve circulation and accessibility, reduce maintenance loads being number 2. Number 3 being improve overall functionality throughout the site. And the last one being improve and diversify the garden experience through new capital projects. So based on our revenue generation assessment, the following summarizes the program to increase revenue within the gardens over time. In addition, each zone has challenges with functionality, maintenance demands, and circulation, which is addressed within each zone. Please note that the areas labeled are only for orientation. It's a pretty complex site, and I know many of you have gotten the chance to visit, but seeing it from a bird's eye view can be a little confusing. So this is just, orienting you. And then what you're seeing kind of colored in, those are the areas that we're actually touching, that we're actually making improvements upon. Everything else we envision to essentially remain as is. So for the first zone, being the main entry and the Missouri barn area, the challenges within this zone are largely related to maintenance of the mowed areas. The expectation to mow all of the turf around the parking lot and entry creates high demands on maintenance staff. In addition, the parking lot needs to be better serve those with physical impairments. You'll see in the draft site plan shown on the screen that the lighter green color is meant to represent a strategy to naturalize the turf areas around the parking lots to visually screen them from one another and from the gardens, while also reducing maintenance demands. ADA parking has been provided closer to the main entry off of the primary drop-off. In addition, we have created a new access point to the adventure park area of the gardens with access to the ropes course and biking trails from the Missouri barn itself, with a flexible outdoor space for wedding event overflow, possibly a beer garden, and for things like court games such as bags or bocce ball. A new parking lot west of the Missouri barn will also serve the adventure park and for weddings and events. So some imagery shown up on the screen for ideas about the event, high ropes course, the skills course for mountain biking, and some maybe single-use trails. For zone 2, this is what we're considering the central gardens. Within this zone, listening session participants indicated challenges with wheelchair accessibility, some missing sight lines between the garden spaces, and a lack of places to pause and rest. In addition, the perennial garden has proved to be a challenge for staff to maintain. You'll see again in the draft site plan, we're showing a strategy to address the high maintenance demands of the perennial garden. The high value perennial collections could potentially be moved closer to the visitor center and reduce maintenance demands. The perennial garden would remain as a critical space within the botanical garden experience, but the planting palette could potentially become simplified to be lower maintenance. This could result in a striking display of native plants, and the space would continue to serve the garden as a wedding venue. We're also showing a new boardwalk to the Meadow Pavilion positioned as the focal point of a sunset garden at the high point of the meadow. Paired with this, on the back side of that hill, potentially a stargazing patio could be considered for constellation viewing and related programming. Lastly, the central garden area would host to be a permanent space for the region's performing arts within the gardens with a new amphitheater and lawn space. This space could also double as a large outdoor wedding venue. And Sarah's highlighting these things on the screen as I'm talking along. For the next zone, we have some imagery for this as well. So we're showing things like a constellation viewing deck, outdoor event space, and some great precedents for boardwalks and what those might look like. For Zone 3, we are considering this area as the woodland just north of the chapel space. While the woodland area is not considered a part of the garden experience at this time, we consider it underutilized, containing key revenue opportunities for the gardens, along with opportunities to diversify and enrich the visitor experience. The draft site plan shows a boardwalk or trail connection to serve foot traffic and tram circulator through the woodland to connect the east side of the gardens to the chapel and chapel parking area. The ADA accessible tree canopy walk Kurt described earlier would be placed in the woodland stretching across the creek north of the lake. This space could also incorporate bird viewing platforms within the woodland, an opportunity many voiced during the listening sessions. In addition, the woodlands can be positioned as a location for overnight accommodations such as glamping sites positioned along the meadow with direct access to the chapel, hiking trails, canopy walk, and wellness platforms. Lastly, nature-based play sculptures like the forest giants are also shown here, could become a forest giant hunt or similar art installation within the woodland and along the boardwalk for visitors to find and engage with large-scale nature-based art sculptures. And again, some imagery to go along with that, including bird blinds, the forest giant sculptures, tree canopy walk, and some yoga or meditation platforms. The fourth zone is what we're considering the operations and the secondary entry zone. What we learned in the sessions with staff is that the entry experience to the chapel is lacking due to the road condition and sequence of entry, which forces visitors through the operations and administration area of the gardens. In addition, circulation of visitors tends to utilize the Lake Road as a return path to the visitor center, creating a poor and lengthy experience. The draft site plan shows a realignment of the secondary entrance with the with the county road to the south and enclosing the maintenance and administration buildings within a back of house area. This approach forces the visitor to experience panoramic views of the gardens upon arrival. In addition, this back of house area can be leveraged to operate the regenerative agricultural practices, in this case, conservation ranching, within a portion of the property, visible to visitors for education and exposure to sustainable agricultural practices. Lastly, the site plan identifies the Lake Road as operations only and creates an alternative path to return to the visitors with an elegant floating boardwalk across the lake. That's the boardwalk that Sarah's highlighting there, that connection. Lastly, the fifth zone being the North Gardens, as many of you might refer to it primarily as the Heartland Harvest Garden. This is the area of the existing gardens that we have done some rethinking on, its composition and circulation. This is the area that draws families, as well as the area that draws the most visitation. We have learned through our listening sessions that there are aspects of this area that just aren't working as well as they could. What we heard about the Heartland Harvest Garden is that it's under-resourced in its large physical footprint. The garden maintenance expectation is high. The visitor experience and amenities need to be elevated, and that there are challenges with circulation and long distances with no opportunity for seating and respite. The Heartland Harvest Garden's original 12 acres of edible garden landscape is losing its form due to its expansive size and maintenance demands. Additional concerns included the location of the children's play area tucked in the rear with limited access, and that it does not serve as a visitation driver. The Missouri Barn and Silo is lacking the ability to serve 3-season events. The visitor center has limited capacity to meet the demands of the regional event and wedding rental market. And therefore, the draft site plan shows a branded Children's Discovery Center and play experience in the northern portion of the garden. The plan shows a retrofit of the vineyard space as a visitor destination for refreshments and comfort. And the plan rethinks some of the Heartland Harvest Garden's footprint to ease maintenance demands and enrich the experience with things like fire pits or oversized porch swings. Lastly, the site plan leverages the silo viewing platform from the Missouri Barn to create art intended to be viewed from above, or in this case, a mass planting. So I know that's a lot to take in. I know we have some chats in the, or messages in the chat that I wasn't able to read while I was talking, so I apologize.
We will certainly revisit those.
Yes.
Let's move on to the Menti questions about all of these spaces. Real quick, just a few image captures of some similar work that we've experienced and designed ourselves. Interactive play spaces, STEM learning, children's discovery spaces, some flexible gathering spaces, places for movable furniture and resting, potentially retrofitting part of the Heartland Harvest spaces with oversized porch swings, as Brian described, or some intimate fireplace spaces that could even be utilized for rental revenue. So we'll now walk you through a series of questions related to the site plan. We have 16 minutes left with you this afternoon, and then Kurt, after this series of questions, Kurt's going to have a few more ideas to present and a couple more questions at the end. So we're going to move to a series of questions on Menti now. So the first is, do you support the idea of utilizing the Missouri Barn as a launching point for the adventure park concept? So it gives a little more clarity to those ideas in terms of how that adventure area would integrate and not so much integrate into the gardens. Be tucked back in the sort of back property, and the Missouri Barn would sort of become a secondary check-in point for that experience. And we certainly put on here, I'm not sure, because we certainly understand that much of this will require more studying from you. And so we will make sure that a PDF of this presentation is presented to you all through email, and in which you can always go back and poll on the online survey starting tomorrow, and also re-reference our video session from today if necessary. So we certainly understand that a large number of people will select, I'm not sure. So let's move forward, Brian. Do you agree with the idea to modify the vineyard to serve as a visitor destination area for refreshment and comfort? So utilizing what we can in that space, but sort of rethinking it as a pause space in the garden to create some of those areas of rest that we heard in our listening sessions were sort of missing from that experience. We heard a lot about long walks from one space to the next. So that's the motivation behind this idea. Great. Next question, are you comfortable shifting the children's area of the gardens closer to the proposed vineyard area and reduce the footprint of the gardens around the education building? So this is one of the strategies where we talked about there's some areas of the garden that are challenging in terms of their maintenance demands, and just thinking about the overall footprint, as we talked about a little bit with our benchmarking, trying to take some areas that might not necessarily provide that high return on investment that other spaces of the garden do, and rethink the composition and the placement of some of those programs. So some big moves here I know are hard to envision. A lot of care and thought has been put into what's there already, of course. Okay. Okay, let's ask the next question, then I'll talk a little bit about one of the comments we just got on the chat. So I know you all are reading this as we go. Do you like the concept of the canopy treetop walk in the woodland area north of the lake? So one of the comments that just came in was, it would be better to provide some feedback on the site plan if we knew what all of these things cost and how they sort of fall in terms of priority for revenue. So that's certainly a wonderful comment. I wish we had 2 hours with you all today when we would walk you through in more detail the business planning side of these recommendations and how it all plays out. But in short, I think the thing to note on that is while some of the capital costs are significant and require some significant donor support, they do it within a 4 to 5 year span, make up the operating gap right now that exists within the garden. So, so we're certainly doing, as I noted early in the presentation, a lot of due diligence in numbers and revenue models. We will be working closely with the board finance committee on ironing some of those out, but certainly, certainly open to transparency on all of that work. Okay, let's move forward. Do you like the concept of the elevated wellness platforms in the Woodland area? And so again, I'll talk a little bit about the comments that are coming in. I see so a lot of great comments coming in, some similar to the one I just was talking about in terms of revenue priority. And Kurt, you may weigh in on this, but just off the top of my head, some of the things that are really targeted at this point in the plan at the short term are things like the rotating nature-based sculpture. We really think there's an opportunity in the market for that, and it's really a proven winner at other botanical gardens. And so we really see that as a key opportunity. The Forest Giants is a great example of that type of installation. And then the other one that really falls to the top, and Brian, please go ahead and move to the next question, and I'll keep talking as we multitask here.
I was going to add, we
yeah.
have suggested to the board sort of prioritizing these around short-term, mid-term, and long-term. Some of these ideas are things that can be quickly begin to generate revenue. Some require more thought and consideration. Market research may require the identification of partners and so forth. Those are long-term, and then there's some that are quite promising, but it's still going to take 12, 24 months or so to plan them in detail and be prepared to execute them. So growing some of the existing businesses, for example, or existing revenue sources, activities are probably some of the easier things because you're already doing them. We just want to figure out how to do them a little better, make it more attractive.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. Let's keep moving on questions. We're nearing the end of our time together. Do you like the idea of adding a permanent performance space, event lawn for performance art and concerts in the garden? It's a big move here, a big add to the gardens, but considering the gardens already host such incredible performing arts events, I think just increasing the ability to do so fluidly is the goal here. Cool, great, okay. So 2 more questions, and then Kurt has a few more things to present at the end, and then 2 more questions following that. So I think we'll hit our time. So next question. Do you like the idea of creating a boardwalk across the lake to provide a shorter return to the visitor center? So this is really trying to combat that challenge of, experiencing the island garden and experiencing the eastern portion of the gardens and then feeling like you're obligated to take the lake road back to the visitor center to complete your experience. Thank you, everyone. So last question on the site planning. Are you comfortable with the recommendation to shift the high value perennial collections from the perennial garden closer to the visitor center to ease maintenance demands?
And Sarah, if I can add, we would still retain the space that the perennial gardens currently is in. It would just be simplified in its palette so that it is easier to maintain.
Thank you, Brian. Great. Thank you, everyone. And these will still register. Don't worry, we're not cutting you off. These will still register as we're moving forward here on the other side. Oops, excuse me. So Kurt?
Obviously, any successful botanical garden is really dependent upon earned admissions, memberships, uh, um, uh, earned income from rentals or whatever they might be, but also philanthropy. And so we think that part of the long-term exercise will be to develop a clearer, more consistent donor recognition strategy that acknowledges folks that have given and contributed to the gardens, and it could take any of the forms that you see here. You see cattails that bear the names of families that have, or individuals that have given to a particular garden. It may be a centralized signboard. In other parks and gardens we've worked on, there are abstractions of the distant mountains or hills, but we think that's an important part of the effort moving forward. So we just want to know how you feel about that, if you like that idea, and certainly if there are comments you'd like to make about this, certainly add those to the chat as well. I know somebody in the chat mentioned the idea of a labyrinth. We've actually built a labyrinth in one of the parks you showed. We showed in one of our images. It's been really quite successful. So that's an excellent idea, I think.
Okay. So last question, everyone. Hang in there with us. Okay, Kurt, take it away.
And then finally, in our discussions, with the board and our steering committee, the mission of the gardens, as it's been discussed, has evolved a bit. You see here the current mission, which is to be an experience that embraces the Midwest spirit of place and inspires an appreciation for the importance of plants in our lives. There's a suggested future draft mission for the gardens that maintains a lot of the same sensibilities, I think, of the current mission, but is a bit more expansive in terms of its thinking, which is to be an inspired experience that elevates the Midwest spirit of place and reveals the importance of nature in our lives through discovery, education, interpretation, and conservation. So we would welcome your thoughts on that as well. Are you comfortable with that suggested evolution of the garden's mission statement?
Well, with that, I think we can conclude. Tabitha, do you have any concluding comments?
Yes, I just
3
want to say
minutes. Okay.
thank you. Put my video back on. Thank you to everyone who participated today. This is such an important moment in this process, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am. So stay tuned, more to come, and look for an email with the link for the survey and the presentation and everything within the next day or so. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.